This is Vineet Pandey, and as you can see, the live session is on, and I'm visible to all of you. So, first of all, repeating once again, I want to tell you this thing that I know you guys are also struggling a bit with my studio quality, but this is not my studio. This is my house, it's my bedroom. So, with limited lights and all, I'm arranging things. But almost my another studio has been finalized. We have fixed a camera, a proper laptop screen, a telescreen to read your comments, and sound, some sound bars, which actually reduce the echo sound. So we are working on it. आई होप बहुत अच्छी चीज़ें हो जाएंगी, जल्दी हो जाएंगी, थोड़ा देर आए दुरुस्त आए की कहावत है. और मैं भी जानता हूँ कि एक बार चीज़ें सेटल हो जाएं तो वी विल पुट 200% एफर्ट्स टू सेट ईच एंड एवरीथिंग. अभी बहुत टाइम है हमारे एग्जाम से रिलेटेड और हम उसमें अपना सारा एफर्ट लगा देंगे. आई होप थिंग्स आर विजिबल टू यू. ओके, दैट्स क्वाइट विजिबल. So, my dear students, before I talk about this particular topic, I want you to have your pen and paper with you, because in this lecture, I will tell you certain points, certain things, and that will be in the flow. So, don't miss that. What you have to do is make sure you have a pen and paper. So, just keep the pen and paper with you, and let me see if the color is fine for you, so there is no trouble of the light. I think I should take this one. Okay, so let's talk about D.H. Lawrence, the first modern writer who studied the idea of sexuality in family. So, first of all, we're going to talk about D.H. Lawrence, the famous writer David Herbert Lawrence. Full name David Herbert Lawrence. He is the first writer to study the idea of sexuality in the family. In the family means when we live in a family, we are sons, we are daughters, we are brother, we are sister. But are we also the woman, the man, the male, the female in our house? So idea of being a male in a family where we have two female, three female, or the concept of being a female surrounded by two or three male. That's very common thing in Indian patriarchal setup. If you see, you are born as a girl and you are living in a family of patriarchal. So you get to know that there are certain differences. People didn't talk about it. And those who talked about it, they talked about it from the feminist perspective. They talked about it from feminist point of view that okay, we need to have some rights for female also. But what about it is not dealing with rights, it's dealing with sexuality. To make it simple, I'll just ask you, do you know that in India, 70% people do not have their own private room? Technically, we all should have our own private space, our own individual room, even if it is a small room. In some big families or the families which do not have bigger houses, you'll see that three, four people are sleeping in the same room. Maybe some on the bed, some in the mattress, but somehow they are not finding the ways in the particular space where they can think and explore their sexuality. D.H. Lawrence is the first person to deal with this idea and is one of the most sensational writer. मॉडर्न लिटरेचर को हाइट्स देने वाला और मॉडर्न लिटरेचर को एक नई डायरेक्शन देने वाला डीएच लॉरेंस है. पूरा मॉडर्न लिटरेचर चेंज कर दिया था. आई टेल यू अ फन फैक्ट. अ फन फैक्ट इज दैट डीएच लॉरेंस wrote a famous work, Lady Chatterley's Lover. A fun fact. Lady Chatterley's Lover, 1928. It was immediately banned. Do you know the F word? The abusive F word that you use to abuse people. No, it is a class, so I'm not writing the proper word. In Delhi, it is common. I've seen people abusing each other. When I was a newcomer to Delhi, I used to get shocked when I would see women, especially, abusing each other. So I was like, why they are abusing each other? They are girls. But now I do understand this, that everybody is equal. At the time, I also came from the patriarchal mindset. So I was like, boys are okay with abuses, but why the girls are abusing? Anyway, that's a different thing. So this F word was for the first time got used by D.H. Lawrence in Lady Chatterley's Lover. Now this was a fun fact. Get back to today's topic. अब हम आज टॉपिक की बात करते हैं. So, one of the most sensational, groundbreaking work, a groundbreaking novel that came in 1913 by D.H. Lawrence was Sons and Lovers. Sons and Lovers was one of a massive hit and a kind of groundbreaking novel. Why? What made it groundbreaking? Sons and Lovers deals with the complex relations in a family. Complex relations where you are not able to define, you are not finding a right word. Society sometimes doesn't accept these kind of relations. So, kind of complex psychological study of relations, that is DS Lawrence Sons and Lovers. So you all know about the basic thing. Let's talk about the basic story. Let's go for it. I'll change the background for you if the background is not that much. Okay, so the first one we have here is a woman, Gertrude Coppard, coming from a refined burger family, a refined girl from a burger family, hi-fi woman, intelligent, convent-educated hi-fi woman. She gets married to Mr. Morrill. Mr. Morrill was charming person, and it is somehow, they meet, they see each other. The hormones are like that for a time being, she chooses him as a husband. Now, Gertrude Coppard gets married to Mr. Morrill, Walter Morrill. उसकी शादी हो जाती है. अब after this, she becomes Mrs. Morrill. Now, Gertrude has become Mrs. Morrill. Soon, Gertrude Morrill finds it out, this woman, Mrs. Morrill, finds it out that living life with Mr. Morrill, Walter Morrill, in rented house, in a meager salary, it's not an easy thing. अब धीरे धीरे क्या होता है, शादी हो गई, शादी होने के बाद प्यार मोहब्बत का भूत उतर जाता है. फिर आपको सैलरी समझ में आती है, आपको रेंट समझ में आता है, आपको इनकम समझ में आता है, बिजली का बिल समझ में आता है. दैट्स द एक्चुअल रियलिटी. That's why William Shakespeare says, love is not love which admit impediments. Love is not time's fool. Love doesn't alter when its alteration finds. Sonnet. William Shakespeare. 1116. Let me not the marriage of true minds. So, Mrs. Morrill, along with these things, the tough lifestyle, when you're not able to go out on trips, along with that, she also finds Mr. Morrill clumsy, boring. She's technically getting bored of her husband. Now, what is the fault of husband? Husband is simple man living a very simple life. He works in factory, and here you will see the lifestyle of people who are working in factory that actually deals with industrialization. What happens? Gertrude Morrill or Mrs. Morrill shifts her attention to the boy, your elder son William. Now, as there are these sons, William and Paul, Gertrude shifts her attention towards William. There is a lack of man in the life of this woman. See, if you talk about binary opposition, what is day? Day is something which is not night. What is a man? Somebody who is not a woman. To define a man, we definitely need a woman. So, just like that, to have an identity of a woman, we need a man. Gertrude Morrill doesn't have her man in the life. Her orientation, her love, her psychological, comfort from her husband is totally shifted now. She doesn't have the same emotions, same feelings as I told you, the hormonal love and all. She doesn't have it for her husband. Technically, it is shifted towards the elder son. But can we call it a sexual relation? No. Remember this point. It is not a direct sexual relation. No. पेपर में कहीं आंसर मत कर देना कि हाँ, no. But there are certain other desires which are bringing them close. See, the different sex have a natural attraction, which is also a psychological point that has been also proved by Freud. Okay, Sigmund Freud has also proved it. There is a natural attraction. A male will definitely get attracted to a female. A female will definitely get attracted to a male. But it's not that okay, we are falling in love with every second girl, every second boy. No. But the kind of a binary opposition, you will have a different kind of relation. So, being a woman, Gertrude Morrell has a lack of man in her life, and William starts filling that void, the gap. Some of the examples are that when Mr. Morrell, Mrs. Morrell fight, William comes and rescues the mother. He takes a stand for mother. Sometimes he stops his father from beating his mother. So becomes a protector, becomes a guardian. Her affections are towards him increasing more and more. But then soon William has to earn some money. He goes abroad and there he dies. William dies. For some time, Gertrude is all alone, and one day another son, Paul Morrell, the most important character, he's suffering from a disease, and Gertrude takes care of him. Gertrude Morrell, his mother, while taking care of him, somehow develops the same emotions again and thinks that Paul is the replacement. Paul is going to fill the void of a need of man in the house, इन हर लाइफ. तो अब जो अटेंशन शिफ्ट हो रहा है वो अटेंशन शिफ्ट हो रहा है बेटे की तरफ. अब पॉल पे शिफ्ट हो जाता है ना. पॉल इज अ मैन who is kind of introvert, doesn't he's not that much happening active and all. Plus Paul also Paul also wants to find his identity. His identity is overshadowed by his mother. His mother makes him mama's boy. हर बात पे मम्मी से बात करना, mama से पूछना. He is kind of mama's boy. But somewhere Paul also wants to have his own identity. Paul wants to have his exploration, where he finds the girl Miriam. Miriam is a good girl, a kind of religious girl. Paul finds her in the church. They go together for long walks, and somehow they also get intimate with each other. And that sexual encounter, D.H. Lawrence says, Paul finds that sexual encounter cold and not satisfying. So Paul has a relation with Miriam, and this sexual encounter has been called cold. Here, Paul also get to meet another woman. इसे एक और लड़की मिलती है यहाँ पे. That is Clara Dawes. Clara Dawes has been divorced from her husband Baxter. इसका divorce हो गया है. Clara has a mother, Mrs. Redford, a very sweet character. Mrs. Redford. So when Paul meets Clara, Clara is a divorced woman, and when Paul meets her, he finds her more active, sexually more active, and he forms another relationship with Clara. Now, Paul is struggling with three women. Miriam, where Miriam is spiritual, he feels some emotions but doesn't find her attractive, sexually attractive. Paul is very much inclined towards Clara Dawes. These two girls are in his life, but then he is under control of Gertrude. So Paul struggling with three different women. Two of them, they are directly having sexual relations with him. Another one doesn't have it. Actually, she has a role of a mother, but she has all other desires. Gertrude doesn't like Miriam and feels scared of Clara. Gertrude takes them as the rivals, as the competition. This is what Freud will study in Oedipus complex. Now, there is a scene. Paul and Clara are together, and Clara's mother, she knows that Paul and Clara, they're going to sleep together. That's a kind of night stay. So Paul is with Clara, and they have a plan to stay together. Mrs. Redford is a good woman. She knows that they're going to sleep together and she doesn't want it. So, what does she do? She talks to them. She's sitting in between. She's not letting them be alone. But then soon she realizes that her efforts of keeping the couple separate is not possible. That is also a Western country. इंडिया होता तो इन इंडियन कंट्री उसकी मम्मी भगा देती उसको, गेट लॉस्ट, चलो अपने बेटा घर जाओ, बहुत हो गया बहुत हो गया. बट व्हाट हैपेंस, then Mrs. Redford realizes that Clara and Paul, they both want to be together. So she goes to sleep. She's like, fine, I'm off the bed. Point is that most of the students, when they study, they ignore Mrs. Redford. We have one more female character, Mrs. Redford. Now, soon you'll see this thing, that the struggle between Miriam, Gertrude, struggle of Gertrude, Miriam, Clara for Paul. It actually gets Paul totally confused. Paul is not able to understand his identity, his lifestyle, he's not able to cope up with these things. And Mrs. Morrill, she's also learning. Mrs. Morrill is also learning to switch. She's also learning to keep her identity separate. To keep her identity. Mrs. Morrill. And soon Mrs. Morrill dies. Which was the color? This was the color? Uh huh. This was. I missed it. Okay. So, and soon Mrs. Morrill dies. Once Mrs. Morrill is dead, Paul finds totally detached from life. He's not able to fill that void that his mother had in his life, and he turns towards arts and nature. He starts focusing on aesthetics. He gives his time to arts, nature, and learnings. This is the story of sons and lovers. The sons are the lovers are the sons. Most important character, Gertrude Morrill. Another most important character, Paul Morrill. Don't forget the name of Clara, which is very important character, Miriam, Mrs. Redford, and Baxter. They can ask these questions. Now, what are the most important themes? So, there are certain themes that I have noted down for you. We have to go for these themes. So, first one, as it's quite clear for you, I'll change the color so that it becomes easy for you. The key theme, the first thing is that key complex family dynamics. Why it's complex family dynamics? The mother married the father, but then shifted the attention to the elder son, then the younger son. And these younger and elder son have to find their own identity. Younger son Paul has Clara and Miriam. So it is complex family dynamics. D.H. Lawrence is actually the first person to study this. Otherwise, the writers, they used to deal with hero, heroine, but they never talked about the relationship of family members living in a family. When you live in a family, the family understanding, family relations are actually social relations. We respect our father because the society has taught us. We love our mothers because the society has taught us. Where people do not have the society, you have seen the snakes, serpent. सांप अपने अंडे खुद खा जाता है तो snake is a mother, but they do not have that kind of social structure. So, point is complex family dynamics because of social structures. So, first point that you have to note down. Second thing, the struggle with identity. William goes to struggle and find out his identity. Then Paul also is struggling to get his identity. Miriam is confused with her religious identity or a normal girl's identity. Clara is confused with her husband identity, with her husband in a married life or an individual identity. And the biggest identity crisis is with Gertrude Morrill. सबसे ज़्यादा confused कौन है? Gertrude Morrill. So this point to be noted. Love and relationship. So this book actually focuses on the idea of love. Love with Miriam. The idea of love from Miriam's point of view. Miriam is not somebody who takes love as a sexual encounter. Clara doesn't believe in that love. Clara believes in a happening life. Gertrude Morrill's love is not physical love. She's not looking for a physical relation through her boys. So technically, the idea of love and relationship that has been properly examined in this particular work. Now, the next point we have is industrialization. See, Walter Morrill and the condition of the family was bad because these people were workers, labor class. He was a mining for a big industry. So in the book, we are repeatedly told about the factory lifestyle. We are repeatedly told about the background strikes. We are repeatedly told about the meager salary and tough conditions of people who were working in those factories at that time. So it's a modern novel dealing with the industrialization. That's a very important point. Industrialization and its impact are quite clear in the book. Then the emotional awakening, emotional awakening, we can call it getting maturity. Yes, Paul, he was in the command of his mother. Then he starts growing up. He's getting maturity, and soon he becomes a person who wants to have his own native, own identity, own exploration. Maturity of Gertrude Morrell. She realizes that she cannot control Paul forever when she shifts her attention and later she dies. William, he has to go for work and life because he knows he has to support the family. So, emotional awakening or emotional maturity, that is also an important theme here. Now, along with these things, one more thing that I'll suggest you is the idea of Oedipus complex by Sigmund Freud. This is the homework for all of you. You have to study this because I will come with a proper lecture on this thing. When I will teach you what is Oedipus complex. I will also teach you what is Electra complex. So take it as your homework. I will not teach you Oedipus complex in a basic way. That okay, it deals with some kind of relationship between son and mother. No, we will go in the depth of it. जब हम पढ़ेंगे पूरी डेप्थ इलेक्ट्रा कॉम्प्लेक्स. That's the homework for you. And also my next lecture, it will be on Oedipus complex and Electra complex. Next lecture would be on Oedipus complex and Electra complex. So what you have to do is do some basic research because I will be teaching you all the latest update, latest studies on the same studies. There are so many postmodern studies which are done on these topics. So we'll see you back once again in my next lecture. Thank you so much.